Hi, I'm Brendan, and welcome to Personality Epistemology. So, this is a deep dive or some kind of dive into my mind, I guess, or an expression of things on my mind. And so, I don't have it right here, but so I have experimented with different forms of bringing together a lot of different reference points and juxtaposing them. I've done this just with a pen on paper. I've done this with printing out content units like what's on the screen and rearranging them in sort of like a puzzle. I've done them as digital layouts, and like in 2011, I don't know if this is very visible, but like in 2011 I was doing this just with like these like books and articles and so on, and just like kind of like a puzzle, kind of trying to piece together reference points to get a bird's eye view of knowledge, reference points. So there's a lot of talk about AI these days and the future of AI and how AI will affect people, but my view is that whatever's going on with that, human beings have a lot more cognitive capacity and abilities than is widely recognized, because they're so suppressed by school and current era philosophies of like, oh, I can't know anything and stuff like that. And so this transformation that I see happening from fragmentation of knowledge and knowledge being sort of like kept within professions or fields, I see this more and more. People are talking about all kinds of things that used to not be talked about. And part of the context of all this, the sort of historical context, is like post-World War II, like the world order that was kind of established then, for example, just as one layer of different sort of different forms of world order, like building on school already existed before the 40s, for example, but then there have been more and more waves of like schooling and education that is basically pushing people away from knowing. Meanwhile, the internet has all these things to identify and learn about and so on. So basically what this comes down to is the future of humanity, the future of human history is up in the air, because the previous era of how things have been done is shifting in a whole bunch of different ways, and there are different cycle theories of history that show that like every 80 or 100 years or 250 years or 500 years there tend to be these shifts. And it seems to me like a number of these different waves or cycles are at the same time, basically in a kind of bigger shifting pattern than ever in some ways. And so part of what the future comes down to, that's often ignored but hard to ignore, is young people. And so like when I was 13 and 14, I was not learning in school. I tried to bring this issue up to my parents, who were academics and so on, and stepdad and so on, and they just did not get it, that I was missing knowledge. And then these days there's like, I have a sketch somewhere that shows this, but what I call epistemic emergence, like not only is more knowledge being shared and experiences and so on, but people are connecting the dots in new ways. And so I'm doing this too. And so like I have this shocked person looking at Earth and then human history behind it, and a reference to Pink's song "What About Us." I mean, there's like all these people, that are usually not taken into account. And I mean, maybe people are still taking them into account, but I see with the AI thing, the capacity of human beings is just ignored, and it's widespread among more conventionally educated people. Beliefs of the people are not capable of things, and maybe something of that has to do with the education system that's been put in place. And that's my view of it. And then more and more people are leaving that or not complying with it. So, anyway, so I find it that many like YouTube videos and other sources of knowledge, articles and so on, as much as they may integrate different themes and topics and get to the point and summarize in more and more depth, things are still really fragmented. And so it's like this quote gets at from an article: the current state of expertise is problematic as knowledge is currently fragmented and communication between disciplines is poor. The way forward for the field of expertise is to join forces. A new field may be created, and I added, is already happening. And then this gets into this thing of boundary turbulence and paradigm change in education, professions, and politics. And so I view all of this through the lens of being one giant interconnected story, which is different from how people are used to thinking of stories, like movies or even long-running TV series usually have, as Robert McKee put it, a small little world, although they're series that have much larger worlds in them. But I use this lens to look at humanity and what's going on in people's lives in very interconnected ways in current times. And so I'm in a position where I come from a sort of anthropological ethos, just growing up with my dad being a cultural anthropologist and so on, and as an epistemologist, like someone who studies knowledge and makes sense of knowledge, and being a highly intuitive and ADHD featuring INTJ personality type, with a sort of creative element thrown in. I don't know, somehow this gives me a certain perspective on things, and I'm sure, I imagine a lot of other people have glimpses of a similar, but it can be overwhelming and it can be confusing and scary and so on. But I've come to see it as overwhelming in a positive way, like Michael Wesch talks about wonder, and it's like the sense of wonder and curiosity and so on opens up all this possibility space to figure things out in liminal times, times where things are not, like what to do is not clear, and people may think, I don't know what to do. And in my current situation, many of my closest friends' lives are at stake because of circumstances, and I believe in many situations people could coordinate better circumstances, but a lot of this cannot be done just by one person alone. It needs collaboration, and so I'm seeking collaborators to figure out how to apply knowledge and teamwork and so on to transform situations. And this might even mean like where people can safely live and so on, when there's a housing crisis and these types of things, or how to get help when the professions are so fragmented they often cannot provide relevant assistance. So this gets into the Epistemic Fluency in Professional Education book about knowledgeable action and actionable knowledge. And like I put it in 2012, this question of responsibility and what's going to happen, because the way the world has been run, so to speak, over the past generations and going back further has some serious problems with it that are colliding. And so and colliding, including with young people growing up and making sense of this and asking more questions. So, and people of all ages starting to ask more questions, or in many cases just being stuck and confused, but adding in curiosity and the realization that I've come to that all kinds of things are known and knowable. Like if you don't know what to do or whatever, somebody somewhere has related expertise and experience. And so by connecting these things together, I've figured out a lot of things. And meanwhile, I'm dealing with a severe set of problems to sort out myself and among people I know, and I'm seeking collaborators to help sort this stuff out, and it gets into accountability as a positive thing, of credit where credit is due. Like, we're born into this world, like we run into problems. Everyone's done things that are not optimal, or have problems, but maybe we can together learn how to figure out better ways to do things. So I welcome, what I would really like is to find people who could get on like Zoom calls with me and talk through and work through some of these different reference points and see how they apply to things that people are talking about in interviews and videos and articles and so on, but then it's still not kind of connecting to, okay, what's the implications of this and what can happen next, and so on. And so, yeah, it's scary, it's overwhelming, but it's actually, there's something worthwhile here, I think. And I welcome thoughts and feedback, and finding the people in the world who maybe want to work through this stuff. Thank you, and more soon.